Willkommen bei Chess Live, präsentiert vom Verein für berufliche Weiterbildung. Wie Sie schneller und effektiver Englisch lernen, das hängt von der Unterrichtsgestaltung ab. Wir engagieren in unserem Teacher Trainer Center Top-Ausbilder wie zum Beispiel Chess. Deshalb unterrichten wir nach modernsten Lernmethoden. Chess Live zeigt in einem lebhaften Interview, wie moderne Lernmethoden zu besseren Lernergebnissen führen. Kompakt in 8 Staffeln auf YouTube. Sehen Sie dazu auch, wie ein idealer Unterricht abläuft und wie er sogar Spaß machen kann. Wir wollen, dass jeder Fremdsprachen lernen kann. Klicken Sie hierzu auf weiterbildunginhamburg.de und sehen Sie unser riesiges Sprachangebot und die schönen Räume in der City Nord. Und jetzt kommt Chess Live.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if the gymnastics part came after that. Remember the irregular verb gymnastics? That also seemed to serve the purpose that people were tired.
Yeah, because I wanted to get the students out of the seats and basically, I do a little bit of work with language, because often, we don't do much for people, who like to learn kinesthetically. That is, people who like to move around. And in fact, I really believe that people who like to move around, the more kinesthetically oriented, are often neglected.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure that if you ask me, I'm sure, out of 10 students that day, maybe, 6 hated that exercise or they didn't see the point. But if that exercise was useful to 4 students, the more kinesthetically inclined, I think it's still a success. Because, of course, I wouldn't do it every single time. And that's the key, I think. I think the key to a good lesson is, to provide a variety of different inputs. You know that I like multiple intelligence theory, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The cardinal point being, that you don't just provide exercises and materials, to suit the needs, the cognitive needs or affective needs of 1 or 2 people in the classroom. You want to try and reach out to your students. You want your lesson to be all-inclusive, not all-exclusive. You don't want to leave anybody out, okay? But often, if you keep doing things the same way, then it might be good for a certain group of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you striking a chord with everybody in the classroom. So even if sometimes some of these exercises, inevitably, if you're dealing with, if you want to cater for the needs of kinesthetic students, inevitably, the exercise you're going to be doing in class, strike some people as being off the wall, very eccentric, stand, clap, do a bit of calisthenics in class. So people don't see the point.
Yes.
But that doesn't matter, Teaching involves, taking huge risks. And I like taking risks. And if students don't understand, I think it's my job to explain. Sometimes I manage to win them over. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. But students don't always know what's good for them. When they come here, with a bunch of preconceived ideas, you see. Also, students, like some teachers, are threatened by changes. If you do something new, if you try and rock the boat a bit, they don't like it. Because that's how, red lights go off and wait a minute, this is not the way I was taught in school. So people don't always embrace changes, just like that. So often, it's a very, very gradual process. A colleague once said that changes in education, so in the classroom, never work like fireworks, but they're more like a fuse. And by that he meant, that it's never a 24-hour sort of thing, It's a mid-term, long-term thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
If you believe in what you're doing.
Yeah. And you just said, if you have students disagree with that, you would explain that to them, meaning you would mention multiple intelligences theory and would talk about how people learn.
If I have, because that happens all the time, if I have people, who don't seem to be enjoying my classes, who are openly critical, or sometimes, they give me a lot of flack, they go to see my supervisor, my job, I think, I don't take it personally. Obviously, I'm not pleased. I'm not ecstatic over these things. But I think what I do, I don't know if this might not work for some people. What I do is, I try and talk to these people offline. That is to say, I never talk to these people in front of the group. Okay? I ask them if I could see them, before or after class. So 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I talk to them in their language. This is not the time, this is not the place to speak about these things in English. You don't want to give them, a tutorial. You don't want to give them extra practice. Okay, this is not a one-to-one lesson. This is an opportunity to sit down and clarify a few things. And I always say something like, I've noticed that, that you're critical, you look bored, you look negative, and I wanted to know perhaps, there's something I've done that, or maybe something I can do, to help you explain. Maybe I haven't made. So I shift the focus. You see, I don't talk about them. I talk about their reaction, but then I pretty much talk about myself, and I say things like, perhaps I haven't made clear, why we're doing this. I haven't explained carefully. I should give you more examples. I should tell you more. Blah blah blah. So I take the blame, even if I think that I shouldn't really, but just for the sake of I want to help the student.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to put him on the spot.
Yes.
I don't because the danger here is that you don't really want your students to feel stupid, because he or she is the one who doesn't seem to be enjoying themselves, whereas the rest of the group is. So you don't want the students to think, wow, I'm the only one, I'm being singled out here. No, that's not the impression you want to give. The impression, the purpose of this little chat is, to basically, go over a few things and, get the students to tell you, what he or she doesn't like about your class, and maybe you can help. Now, sometimes it works. Sometimes a little chat is all that's needed. Sometimes a letter, where you explain things. Like I said, sometimes, the students see the point of the activities. If they trust you, that's fine, and then, they're happy to stay. Sometimes they just don't buy it. And if they don't, there's only so much you can do, Once you've tried every single thing under the sun to motivate the student, to clarify things during class, if the student is still negative and he or she doesn't want to learn, if they keep asking you for more gap filling exercise, because gap fill exercise is all they want to do, that goes against my way of doing things in the classroom. So I'm ready to adapt to to the way a student wants to learn things. But like I said before, I don't necessarily think that a student always knows what's good for them. So I don't believe in gap fill exercises. I have my reasons. Okay, so if the student doesn't accept that, then we have to leave it at that. Then we have a situation. Then we have a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't think a teacher should feel defensive or should take it personally if a student is negative or seems to have a lot of criticisms about the way we teach. I don't. It's obviously it's never a pleasant experience. I mean, somebody come up to you and say, I don't really like your classes. I prefer Mr. Such and Such. But it's never. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So if it doesn't, it's life. You can't be liked by everybody. You can't please everybody. So that's the way it is. You can't win them all. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. I think we're almost finished with the lesson plan. I think the last thing we did, if I remember correctly, is that you had them write down 2 statements that were true for them, had them exchange papers, and then had the other person ask follow-up questions on that.
Oh yeah. But that's still, a way to personalize what we're doing and hopefully, make it stick in a sense. Making the learning material more memorable. Yeah.
So that goes under the same.
Very much so.
Okay. Yeah, and at the end, if we didn't leave anything out, you did a little wrap-up, right?
Yeah, I always do that because I want my students to leave the room thinking today I've learned this and that. I want my students to feel good about the 1.5 hours that they spent in class. To give them a sense of achievement.
Yes.
And also because, you know, that refreshes their memory. Because, you know, a new word or a new expression that they learned at the beginning of class is not necessarily remembered, and it's not necessarily going to stay with them, you know, after class. So if you give them another chance, you know, to see the words up on the board, then, you know, I think, you know, they have a better chance to remember when they did that particular class with you. That's why. And I think it's a nice way to sort of, you know, round things up. You know, that's why.
Okay, and that's usually a 5-minute thing or something.
There are no rigid formats.
Yes.
It could be 1 minute, 2 minutes, you know.
Yes.
But it's obviously it's got to be the very last thing you do with them. Yeah.
Okay, good.